A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. I no longer see you. I want to go to the hospital too, Connor said the next morning in the car with his grandma. I don't want to go to school today. His grandma just drove. It was quite possible she was never going to speak to him again. How was she last night? He asked. He'd waited up for a long time after the monster left, but had still fallen asleep before his grandma came back. Much the same, she said tersely, keeping her eyes firmly on the road. Is the new medicine helping? She didn't answer this one for so long he thought she wasn't going to, and was on the verge of asking again when she said, It's too soon to tell. Con let a few streets go by, and then he asked, When is she going to come home? This one his grandma didn't answer, even though it was another half hour before they got to school. There was no hope of paying attention in lessons, which once again didn't matter because none of the teachers asked him a question anyway. Neither did his classmates. By the time lunch break came around, he'd passed another morning not having said a word to anyone. He sat alone at the far edge of the dining hall, his food uneaten in front of him. The room was unbelievably loud, roaring with the sounds of his classmates, and all their screaming and yelling and fighting and laughing. Connor did his best to ignore it. The monster would heal her, of course it would. Why else would it have come? There was no other explanation. It had come walking as a tree of healing, the same way that made the medicine for his mother. So why else? Please, Connor thought as he stared at his still full lunch tray. Please. Two hands slapped down hard on either side of the tray from across the table, knocking Connor's orange juice into his lap. Connor stood up, though not quickly enough. His trousers were soaked in liquid, dripping down his legs. O'Malley's wet himself, Sully was already shouting, with Anton cracking up beside him. Here, said Anton, flicking some of the puddle for the table at Connor. You missed some. Harry stood between Anton and Sully, as ever, his arms crossed, staring. Connor stared back. Neither of them moved for so long that Sully and Anton quieted down. They started to look uncomfortable as the staring contest continued, wondering what Harry was going to do next. Connor wondered too. I think I've worked you out, O'Malley, Harry finally said. I think I know what it is you're asking for. You're going to get it now, Sully said. He and Anton laughed, bumping fists. Connor couldn't see any teachers out of the corner of his eye, so he knew Harry had chosen a moment when they could bother him unseen. Connor was on his own. Harry stepped forward, still calmly. Here is the hardest hit of all, O'Malley, Harry said. Here is the worst thing I can do to you. He held out his hand, as if asking for a handshake. He was asking for a handshake. Connor responded almost automatically, putting out his own hand and shaking Harry's before he'd even thought about what he was doing. They shook hands like two businessmen at the end of a meeting. Goodbye, O'Malley, Harry said, looking into Connor's eyes. I no longer see you. Then he let go of Connor's hand, turned his back and walked away. Anton and Sully looked even more confused, but after a second they walked away too. None of them looked back at Connor. There was a huge digital clock on the wall of the dining hall, bought sometime in the 70s as the latest technology and never replaced, even though it was older than Connor's mum. As Connor watched Harry walk away without looking back, walk away without doing anything, Harry moved past the digital clock. Lunch started at 11:55 and ended at 12:40. The clock currently read 12:06. Harry's words echoed in Connor's head. I no longer see you. Harry kept walking away, keeping good on his promise. I no longer see you. The clock ticked over to 12:07. It's time for the third tale, the monster said from behind him.